going on, YouTube? Today we are going to be lowering Stevi's bike. We got a link kit here. I'm going to put the link in the description down below on where to get this for your Vulcan 650. They said that they're 17 and greater, and this is a 18, so hopefully it works. Hopefully I ordered the right kit. But as you can see, it comes with like a little washer bearing spacer thing and 2 link kits. Alright, so for this you're gonna need a 17 millimeter 3/8 socket, a 14 deep, a 14 shallow, and then a 3/8 12 deep socket, a 10 millimeter 1/4 inch socket, and a 14 millimeter 1/4 inch. Various 1/4 inch ratchets, 3/8 ratchet. It helps to have a 14 millimeter open end wrench, 3 millimeter and 4 millimeter hex, screwdrivers, pry bar, hammer helps, flashlight, and some blocks to kind of hold the rear wheel up. And a friend, definitely. You're gonna need someone's help to do this. So yeah. Alright, so first step is you want to support the rear wheel and swing arm assembly, so when you start taking the OEM link off, parts don't start flying everywhere. So I just used a few pieces of wood that are laying around the garage just to kind of get something out of there. So after that, now that the suspension is supported, we are going to start taking the OEM link off. Alright, so next step is to, free up a little bit of space by taking this panel off. You're going to get your 3 millimeter hex. Take these forward screws off, and I believe there's a 10 millimeter behind this. So once we get these off, we gotta get to that 10 millimeter, pop the 10 millimeter out, this panel will come off, and we'll free up a little bit of room for this bolt right there for the link. So after that, we'll take these 2 10 millimeters out. Make sure these little things don't fly out. That's what those little screws go into. We have washers on them, don't lose those. Once you get those 2 10s off, this panel should just kind of pop right out. There you go. In order to get the bolts out of the link, you're going to have to take this brace off. That goes to the rear fender. So you do that by removing these 2 4 millimeter. Get that off, that'll pop off with the washers. Take this 14 loose. And then this one up here. So you gotta take this panel off too. This big old plastic cover's gotta come off. That way you get to the last bolt. There's 3 bolts that hold that on. I believe when you do, if you want to put a rear seat on your Vulcan, you have to replace this whole thing. There you go. So that just slides out from right there. You take these 2 12s out. There you go. Pop that one loose a little bit and let it kind of hang out of the way. So now the link is literally right in front of your face when you take that off. I think I'm going to take the mounting bolt for the strut loose just a little bit. That is a 17. So mainly you're gonna reach up through there and get your socket on there. You kind of have to fiddle around with it. And once you get it on there, you're gonna hold it, pull down on it, and it should get that nut loose. Now I got lucky and the bolts on this side have not rotated sometimes. Like if you're loosening a nut and there's a bolt on it, you'll loosen it enough and then the bolt will start to spin, so you need to put something on there like a wrench or something just to hold it in place so you can loosen up the nut. All right, so all 3 of these nuts are loose. So the link that you're going to loosen up is the forwardmost link. They're 14mm bolts and one 14mm nut right here on the other side of that forwardmost link. So there are 2 ways to getting this link out. The correct way, which is to grab a jack and a block of wood and support the bottom of the motor on the motorcycle. You want the block of wood to be on the bottom of the engine, not touching the exhaust. And you want to jack up the jack just a little bit, enough to where it contacts and supports the motorcycle. You want to have someone watch the motorcycle, make sure it doesn't tip over or anything of that matter. With the motorcycle jacked up, you should now be able to slide the OEM link out with the 3 bolts. And the other way is you kind of just grab the tail end of the bike, lift it up, and yank the link out with all of the bolts. So, as you can see here, I'm having someone lift the back end of the motorcycle up so I can fit 2 blocks of wood in there. That'll relieve pressure off of the OEM link. That way when you take it out, it doesn't come crashing down on your fingers. So now I'm going to show you the more sketchy and dangerous way of removing this link if you don't happen to have a jack. Alright, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up on this. You try and yank that bolt out. Alright.
Okay.
Oh shit. There you go.
We're all the ones to spin up?
Yeah. Alright, so if you want to slam the fuck out of your Vulcan, just take that link out completely.
That thing's low as shit.
Another tip I forgot to mention is there are sleeves that go into these 3 mounting points right here. So make sure they don't fall out. There are needle bearings on the inside of them. Make sure those are in place if they do fall out and you have to end up pushing the sleeves back in. So this is the difference in the
You can't see it, one's black.
There you go. So the mounting holes moved a little bit. Right there and there, it's just moved back.
Can you zoom in on it?
A little farther out. As you can see, the holes don't match up just because they're just moving the mounting points of these 3 links. Essentially stretch it out. And now the fun part, trying to get this shit back on. So if you're going to attempt to do it this way, which I do not recommend, make sure that your friend or helper that you are using is strong. This bike is not light. If they were to drop it on your hand or arm, you could cause some serious injury. Thus why we put the wooden blocks under the rear tire just in case something were to happen. But just save yourself the hassle and use the jack under the frame of the motorcycle. That was a bitch. Make sure you have a friend when you do this. You take your washer. Thanks, Lee. Take your washer and you put it on the back side of this, the back bolt. Your arrow's got to be facing forward. And you just slide it through. You might have to grab your friend again to lift up. Yeah, because the bolts aren't 100% lining up. Alright, ready? 1, 2, give it a go.
Oh no, it's been like that.
That was me.
Yeah, it'll go right back in.
2, 3. And you push them all through, and you're good to go. You should be able to lower it. Okay. Go. Now, you're practically done. Put the nuts on the back hand side. Thank your friend Lee again. And if you don't have a Lee, you need to find one. Make life easier. So, basically, do everything in reverse order, and you are good to go. Now that we've reinstalled all the parts that we've taken off and tightened up all the bolts that we have previously loosened, we're going to move on to how to lower the front suspension. For this, you will need a jack to lift the frame of the motorcycle up. If you don't, the forks will slam into the handlebars and you'll struggle getting them to the correct position. You're going to loosen up both of these 6mm hex bolts on the top of the forks. You loosen up the lights, and then you're going to loosen up this part right here on the fork. and then you're gonna lower it, essentially push the forks up, and then you're gonna move the lights back down to the bracket. That's a 4mm. Now you install the rear stand and jack the frame of the bike up. So, what we're gonna do, put this under there, stay away from the exhaust, and we'll raise it from the bottom of the motor. Next, you're gonna jack the frame of the motorcycle up. That way you can alleviate some of the weight from the front forks. So when you loosen the hex bolts holding the forks to the triple tree, it'll allow the suspension to collapse essentially, and you'll be able to lower the jack and the forks will slowly go up whenever the weight is put back on the front wheel. You want to make sure that you're not lowering it too much to where the top of the forks are hitting the handlebars. At this point, you want to notate where the stock location of the forks are rested in the triple tree. That way, whenever you do lower the jack, you can measure roughly 10mm, and you want it to be equal on both forks for both sides. That way, you don't run into any issues when riding down the road. If you accidentally lower the forks too much or raise them too high into the triple tree, you can smack the front tire a little bit or take a block of wood and put it on top of the forks and gently tap that with a hammer to make sure that you are getting the correct measurements on both sides, which is roughly 10mm from where the stock marks are for the forks. In this case, I lowered them as much as I could without them contacting the handlebars, just because Stevie is really short and she could honestly use any kind of help to help her flat foot, which is definitely accomplished by installing this kit. When you get your fork to the desired lowered position, you can go ahead and tighten up the 6mm hex bolts that hold the forks to the triple tree. You want those pretty tight. You don't want them to come loose while you're riding. After you do that, you can move the turn signal lights down to the brackets, install the 4mm hex bolts, and take the jack off of the lower portion of the bike or the frame, and you can take the bike off the rear stand and jounce it around, double check, make sure all your bolts are tight and nothing moved around, and you are good to go. Bam, right on the money.
Money, money, money.
That's how you do it right there. Make sure you got a jack and a piece of wood and some friends. If you don't have a lead, get you a lead. These come in handy. Alright, so this is where you insert the picture on the difference between the front and rear. As you can see right here, we just lowered the forks about 3/4 of an inch. They say that you should cut your kickstand a little bit, but it's not too bad of an angle on it right now, so we're gonna wait on that until I can get it up to a shop to cut it a little bit, and we'll be good to go. But yeah, that's how you install the lowering link kit for the Vulcan 650. Bye.